Hi, my name is Garrett Bettis. I'm going to be talking about private placement memorandum, a term sheet, and what is due diligence. What is a private placement memorandum? It is when a company wants to deal privately to secure higher capital or actually gain capital for their company. These are private security exchanges, and so these companies won't deal with the SEC because of the 1933 Securities Act, because 1930 Securities Act deals with public companies. In this case, this is a private sector, so they have another regulation, and this regulation is Regulation D, which is a set of rules and regulations to help support investors for not being cheated out and between the company and the investing side. So in this case, for a company that is private, it helps them to achieve capital in the private sector, and usually they generate higher yields. And with dealing with these private sectors, you're more connected with powerful people, because the people that are going to be giving out the money to help build your capital are very powerful people. They may be, the top 1%ers. So it helps to get to know these people to make good investments, or to even give advice about your company or things like that. And also, when dealing with the private placement memorandum, you also want to be careful of scammers because of what you have to give these people, like your bank account, all these other information, your social security, to make sure you are who you are. But you don't want to give this information to the wrong person. It may lead to identity theft, or worse, your company may go under because of a bad investment. Also, private placement memorandum, these transactions don't always happen. They're kind of rare, so you have to look for the right people in order to gain that capital your company may need. Another thing is, when you are pitching your company, you want to be able to make sure you're ready. You have everything ins and out about your company. And also, what makes up a private placement memorandum? This is a set of ins and outs about your company, any potential risks that your company may have. May also include a term sheet and some also legal disclosures. All these are included because this is a big investment for the investors, who need to know if your company will be able to survive and is not just dumping this money to a company which will go under in the next couple of years or so. They will make sure they're giving the money to the right person and to the right company. What is a term sheet? Term sheet is between investor and the company or slash entrepreneur. There are a couple of types of term sheets, or when you may encounter a term sheet. For an entrepreneur wanting to start his company, you may start with the first term sheet being like the seed term sheet. In this case, this will deal with how he's going to raise the capital and some other disclosures about the decisions between the investor and the company. And then later, after that first term sheet, you may encounter the A and B term sheet, which may deal with who's going to be on the board, who's going to be the CEO of the company. And these are some big decisions, because the investors may not want you as a CEO, if you're the entrepreneur, or you might have some decisions that you're not agreeing with them. So this helps determines what's going to be what about the the transaction. Although the term sheet is not really a legal document, it's kind of like the blueprint. Later there's to be the final draft and the actual signings in the final draft between the investor and the entrepreneur. And when starting off with your first term sheet, you want to keep everything simple, and to make sure you're not going to be scammed out of certain things about your company, and you're not going to be cheated in the long run. I want to quickly talk about venture capitalists, because venture capitalists deal with the term sheet and may be one of the first term sheets you encounter with, because venture capitalists are kind of the people that help start up your company. And there's a lot of things to be careful when dealing with venture capitalists, because there may be some hidden clauses they may include. You want to make sure to cover everything and not to be cheated out. There's also the venture capitalists may want a big portion of the company, so they want because they're going to be giving you this money, they want a portion of your company, and depending on who you are, you may not want to give too much, because then they start making the rules and start making a decision about what your company should be going towards. So you may want to be careful about that, being an early entrepreneur. And also, they may not want you as CEO. They may want someone who's older or more mature. If you're a new guy out of college wanting to start a business, so you kind of want to be careful of that. And also, if your company does go under, what happens with the bankruptcy? Venture capitalists usually get the good end on this. They get your assets and they kind of get their money back before you do in some cases. So you want to be careful with that, because venture capitalists really do deal with the term sheets. Next, I want to talk about due diligence. Due diligence deals with the term sheet and the private placement memorandum, because it's the actual analyzing of the financials. Due diligence can be done by the financer, the accountant, or the team that's dealing with the investment. They want to make sure to look into the financials, to look for all the ins and outs of the company, to make sure the risks aren't too high. Due diligence takes a lot of time, so you want to make sure you got the right team that has the time for it. Also, the work ethic. You make sure you're not having some of your team members that are doing the due diligence to slack off or kind of breeze through the financials. You want to make sure you have a strong work ethic. Next, you want to be asking the right questions. So when you come within the company, you want to ask all these questions to find out the ins and outs. But you also don't want to ask too many questions, because then you may push away the company because you might be too hard on them. Also, you want to help determine if the company is worthy of investing. So it's that borderline, asking the right amount of questions but not asking too much, because you want to make sure you got all the info about the company. And when doing the due diligence, you want not to breach confidentiality by going to their customers and seeing if there have been some bad situations. You kind of want to make sure you're on the legal side. You're talking to people that deal with their sector in the business, or journalists who covered them. So you gotta be careful on not breaching confidentiality. And like I said, due diligence is part of the term sheet. You do those analyzing the finances, and is also part of the private placement memorandum. This concludes my discussion about private placement memorandum, the term sheet, and due diligence.